Welcome to our YouTube channel where we explore the key takeaways from popular books in the realm of personal growth and self-improvement. Today, we're delving into Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud, a book that offers valuable insights into the importance of letting go in order to grow. In Necessary Endings, Henry Cloud discusses the concept of pruning in different aspects of life. Just like in gardening where plants need to be pruned for new growth to occur, we also need to let go of certain things in our lives to make way for new opportunities and growth. So, let's dive into the summary of this incredible book. But before we dive into the content, I kindly request a moment of your time to appreciate this video by liking it, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Cloud emphasizes that endings are a part of life and are necessary for personal and professional growth. Whether it's letting go of toxic relationships, unproductive habits, or even failing projects, endings are essential for us to move forward and reach our full potential. The book also highlights the importance of setting clear boundaries and making tough decisions when needed. Cloud argues that avoiding necessary endings can lead to stagnation and hinder our progress towards greater fulfillment and success. Through compelling stories and practical advice, Necessary Endings encourages readers to embrace change, take control of their lives, and cultivate a mindset that welcomes new beginnings. It teaches us that letting go is not a sign of weakness, but rather a courageous step towards a better future. Have you ever felt like you were stuck in a rut with a part of your life? Maybe it was a difficult relationship that never went anywhere, or a job that was unsatisfying enough to make you want to slit your wrists and do push-ups in salt water. Sometimes it's as simple as that nasty hangnail that just won't go away without a struggle. Whatever it is, ending things that we know are holding us down is tough. It's often easier to remain in pain because change is so hard. Sadly, too many people are surprisingly good at sticking with things that suck the life out of them. But it's important that we learn how to say no more when we need to cut something off from our lives. This is where Henry Cloud's Necessary Endings comes in handy. Although transitions are difficult, Cloud makes it a little easier by outlining some steps to get you out of that rut. After reading this, you'll feel inspired to take a hard look at your life and make some necessary improvements. Closing out what's keeping you from blooming is good for you. This book will teach you how to make your necessary endings happen. Here are 3 of the most life-changing principles this book teaches about endings. To prune away the aspects of your life that are holding you back, focus on your goals. Change is hard, but creating urgency by taking a hard look at your current circumstances will boost your motivation to act. Ending a relationship can be particularly tough, so set standards and visualize what you want to accomplish after making the separation official. Grab your pruning shears and let's learn how to cut away the things that keep us from greatness. Lesson 1. Focus on your goals to help yourself prune those things that are holding you back from reaching your full potential. Have you ever pruned a tree or bush? It seems strange to cut something back, but is actually remarkable when you think about the purpose. We prune things to help them grow more healthy, vibrant, and beautiful. A rose bush, for example, will grow healthier and more colorful when pruned properly. To prepare for slashing out of your life that which holds you back, think of your life like a rose bush. Imagine all the health and happiness you will achieve by making those necessary steps to move forward in your life. Just like that gardener pruning his rosebush thinks of the beautiful end result he seeks, you should do the same. Take some motivation from Jack Welch, author of Winning and former CEO of General Electric. His cutbacks involved layoffs and canceling unproductive business ventures. The result was the market value of the company rising from $14 billion to $410 billion. GE also become one of the top in its market. One additional tip for making endings easier is to see them as good and natural parts of life. We too often look to shearing the baggage from our lives as negative and something to avoid. But remember our rose bush analogy. Without pruning, the bush grows unruly and may even die from disease and pests. Don't let that be your fate. Lesson 2. Make it easier to start changing your life by getting the urgency that comes from looking hard at your current circumstances. The reason endings are so difficult is that they require us to change. We'd like to stay in our comfort zones, making improvements only when completely necessary. We either need the fear of continuing forward or the opportunity of something greater to push us. What works best is when we feel that it's urgent to get out of our current situation. Imagine you are the CEO of a business that sells chairs. Your company is barely staying afloat, but you're managing all right. One day, an employee notifies you of a rival whose prices are lower and chairs are better. Wouldn't that light a fire under you to cut off your current supplier in favor of a better one? For a more personal approach, spend some time in front of the mirror. Literally, go stand at the mirror and look honestly at yourself. What does it feel like to be where you're at right now? Take some time to really reflect. Feel, smell, and imagine your current state. Then look to your future. Can you imagine taking everything you're feeling right now with you? Let that dissatisfaction you now feel fuel your movement for improvement. Lesson 3. Overcome hurdles to breaking off relationships by setting standards and realizing what you hope will happen after the separation. Ending relationships is particularly difficult. Most of us are more in love with the idea of being in love than with the people we think we're in love with. It's easy to stay comfortable in what we know, even if that is bringing us down. But sometimes, even what seem like the best relationships must come to an end. So how can you navigate this difficulty? First, you'll need to decide whether it's worth ending in the first place. Be clear about your standards and aspirations, and communicate them to your significant other. The next step is to let them decide for themselves if they can move forward with meeting your desires. If their answer is that it's not possible, end the relationship. That's easier said than done, right? The conversation required to end the relationship is a tough pill to swallow. Let's look at some ways to make it a little easier. Similar to our rosebush analogy from earlier, consider your end goal beyond the discussion to make it easier. What will it feel like to be able to move on? How will you use the additional emotional space and time to move forward? Decide in advance what you want to say and be clear on your desires. If the relationship is abusive, put your foot down that you never want them to contact you again or you'll involve the authorities. Necessary endings really inspired me to take action on some changes I want to make right now. I'm confident that it will have the same motivational power for you as well. This book is a must-read for everyone. If you've ever struggled to leave a lousy job or a toxic relationship, psychologist Henry Cloud has advice for you. In Necessary Endings, Cloud argues that pulling out of a bad situation is often the best way to move forward with your life. According to Cloud, we should view the endings in our lives positively, as those endings enable us to begin to live the lives we want. Cloud offers strategies for assessing the various situations in your life, determining which of them need to end, and making sure that your endings stick. In our guide, we've distilled Cloud's actionable advice for making changes in your life. We've also included commentary from the worlds of business and psychology that adds more nuance and detail to Cloud's ideas about business, life, and boundaries. To assess whether your employees are being set up to fail, consider the quality of their relationships with management. If these relationships became strained at the same time as performance dropped, it may be a sign that your employees have been set up to fail. Use character to assess relationships. Once you've considered the structural factors at play, assess relationships based on your impression of the other person's character. Cloud claims that character is predictive of whether or not people will be receptive to change and feedback. According to some psychologists, people tend to overestimate the relationship between another person's actions and their character. These psychologists suspect that we overestimate our knowledge of others due to an inherent tendency to view ourselves as being more complex than others. These kinds of cognitive biases may complicate the process of judging someone's character. According to Cloud, people can generally be sorted into 3 categories based on their character. There are responsible people, irresponsible people, and dangerous people. Cloud offers different strategies for dealing with each type of person. Cloud notes that people are too complicated to truly fall into 3 simple categories. However, these 3 categories can still be a useful heuristic for determining which relationships to end. Many psychologists have created systems for comparing personality types, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. For example, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, which is widely used in the business world, sorts people into 16 types. Supporters of the MBTI argue that it helps companies support employees, but critics note that there's little scientific evidence that supports the MBTI. Other researchers believe that there are 4 personality types, though they note that there are numerous other ways to group people. 1. Responsible people. Cloud refers to them as wise people. Responsible people are characterized by their ability to take ownership of their actions. They're able to admit and apologize when their mistakes have hurt others, and they readily incorporate feedback and change unwanted behaviors. Responsible people are by far the easiest group to deal with. Relationships with responsible people are often improved by open communication. If you tell them what they're doing wrong, they're likely to correct it on their own. Responsible people reward your investments in relationships with them. They benefit from coaching and education more than others. If you're dealing with a responsible person, communicate openly and honestly, and you're unlikely to have to end the relationship. Help your employees behave responsibly. According to business psychologists, employees with a sense of ownership in the company behave more responsibly and productively. To increase the sense of ownership among your employees, these experts recommend assigning employees projects that affect their roles and allowing them to work on a given project from start to finish. These measures help your employees invest in their day-to-day tasks, encouraging them to act responsibly. As you enact measures to help your employees feel a sense of ownership, you should also strengthen your relationships with your employees. Business coaching experts note that employees only respond positively to coaching when managers understand their desires and motivations. As you get to know your employees more personally, request feedback on how best to support them. This information will help you to coach them more effectively in the future. 2. Irresponsible people. Cloud refers to them as fools. As you might expect, irresponsible people are in many ways the polar opposites of responsible people. Irresponsible people are unable to take responsibility for their actions, instead finding an external factor to blame for any mistakes they make. When pressed about their behaviors, they'll deflect or become heated and defensive. Psychologists note that defensive behavior often coincides with a neurological fight-or-flight response. In other words, people react defensively as a way of protecting themselves when feeling threatened. In these moments, people who get defensive feel that your criticism of their behavior is an attack on them as a person. In response, they use defensive tactics to try to protect themselves. When dealing with irresponsible people, it doesn't always help to communicate directly about problem behaviors. Instead of critiquing specific misbehaviors, Cloud recommends calling out their overall inability to accept responsibility for their action. Point out to irresponsible people that they always find someone or something else to blame when things go wrong. This can sometimes help them change their patterns. Setting consequences also works well with irresponsible people, as it forces them to bear the weight of their own mistakes, which encourages them to change their behavior. For example, suppose you're struggling with an employee who habitually misses deadlines. Not only is this employee always behind schedule, they always have an excuse, always finding something or someone else to blame for their lateness. According to Cloud, trying to talk to them about their time management will be ineffective, as they'll only continue to deflect responsibility. Instead, point out to the employee that they're never accountable for their mistakes, and that their pattern of making excuses makes it difficult to manage them. By making them aware of their cycles of irresponsibility, you may help them begin the process of breaking those cycles. It may not always be possible to improve relationships with irresponsible people. If you've tried communicating and setting consequences to no avail, Cloud recommends putting up boundaries to protect yourself. In some cases, this might mean bringing the relationship to an end. Set boundaries with irresponsible people. Just as Cloud opines that consequences help irresponsible people change their behavior, in Set Boundaries, Find Peace, Nedra Glover Tawwab argues that you must enforce consequences for others to respect your boundaries. According to Tawwab, consequences serve a dual function. They communicate to others that your needs are serious, and they protect you from people who don't respect your boundaries. Tawwab recommends limiting your time with irresponsible people, as it both protects you by limiting your exposure to them and strongly communicates that a change is needed. As you set boundaries with the irresponsible people in your life, be sure to speak up immediately when unwanted behaviors occur. Tawwab argues that communicating your discomfort in the moment helps to end uncomfortable situations as fast as possible, while also preventing resentment from building. 3. Dangerous people. Cloud refers to them as evil people. Dangerous people are completely unlike the first two groups. Whereas both responsible and irresponsible people may sometimes cause harm by accident, dangerous people intend to harm others with their words and their actions. They are unsafe to be around. None of the strategies we have listed are effective in dealing with dangerous people. According to Cloud, nothing you can do will change their behavior. Instead, end any and all relationships with dangerous people and do your best to keep away from them. Cloud notes that deterrence, such as legal actions or calls to law enforcement, can be effective in keeping dangerous people away. And why does he do that? Lundy Bancroft describes dangerous people as abusers. According to Bancroft, abusers are people who intentionally harm others to get what they want. Like Cloud, Bancroft believes serious deterrence, such as arrests and litigation, can be used to curb abusive behavior. Beyond the individual level, Bancroft argues that to deal with dangerous, abusive people, you have to fight the cultural conditions that enable their actions. According to Bancroft, abusive behavior is often fueled by social imbalances in power due to money, race, gender, disability, or other criteria. Rectifying these power imbalances makes it more difficult for abusers to target vulnerable individuals. Let the other person decide. If, after assessing someone's character, you're still not certain whether to end your relationship with them, it can help to let the other person decide. Cloud refers to this process as self-selection. Letting the other person decide entails communicating your standards to the other person and allowing them to choose whether they want to live up to those standards. Communicate your expectations clearly when you allow the other person to decide. Leadership experts note that people can't live up to your standards if you don't clearly communicate them in the first place. In workplace settings, it can be helpful to create a list of always and never behaviors for employees. For example, communication procedures that must always be followed or interpersonal behaviors that are never acceptable. Creating such clear-cut criteria makes it easier for employees to decide if they want to work with you. Cloud points out that allowing the other person to make the decision has benefits for both parties. If you struggle with guilt when imposing consequences in relationships, allowing the other person to make the decision can help alleviate this feeling. This style of decision-making can feel more inclusive to the other person. Instead of passing down behavioral mandates, you're including them in the decision-making process. For example, suppose you have an employee who does excellent work but is lax about deadlines. You could simply tell them to work harder, or you could let them decide. Let them know that you admire their work and want them to succeed, but in order to stay with the company, they'll need to meet their next set of deadlines. This clarifies your expectations for the employee and puts the power in their hands. At the same time, it gives you a clear-cut, guilt-free way to decide whether to end the relationship. Experts argue that when employees are involved in decision-making processes, they tend to feel more engaged and perform better. Based on these findings, including employees in a mutual decision-making process about their role may help encourage them to rise to your standards. Enact endings. Once you've determined that a change or an ending is needed in a particular situation, create structures that encourage you to act. Then, when it's time to break things off, prepare carefully for that conversation. Finally, after an ending, take time to grieve, as grieving helps you process the experience and learn from it. Create structures that encourage action. As you move toward ending a situation or relationship, you'll want to create structures that keep you engaged in the process. Cloud notes that it's easy to lose focus when dealing with difficult situations. Because these situations are painful, we naturally want to focus elsewhere, which can lead us to delay making important changes. To stay focused on the problem situation, regularly schedule time to work on the problem and set deadlines for taking action. Regularly scheduling time to work on the problem helps you avoid losing focus, and setting deadlines helps ensure that you don't delay your endings indefinitely. It can be helpful to bring other people in to hold you accountable to your decisions. Cloud argues that people who aren't directly involved are less likely to avoid the problem and can help to keep you motivated. For example, if you need help ending a dead-end job, you could set a deadline with someone who will keep you accountable, such as a friend, coworker, or family member. While on your own it might be easy to delay putting in your 2 weeks' notice, having a friend to call you out can help redirect your focus. Expert tips for ending problem situations. If you're nervous about approaching a tough situation, it may help to take a direct approach to communication. Psychologists argue that people avoid difficult conversations because they're a lot of work for the brain to handle. To get over that mental hurdle, experts recommend a direct approach, being candid with everyone involved about your feelings regarding the situation. Immediately and directly addressing the issue opens communication and helps others to engage respectfully, even if they disagree with you. In addition to communicating directly, create a schedule that will allow you to handle the situation with maximum productivity. Schedule time early in the day and a lot more time than you think you'll need. Experts note that you're more likely to be energized and productive earlier in the day. And allotting extra time ensures that you'll have enough time to handle things, even if you're interrupted or experience unexpected complications. Once you've laid out a schedule for dealing with the problem, you'll want to bring on another person to keep you accountable to that schedule. However, think carefully before choosing a friend. Your accountability partner should be someone who is ready to push you and call you out when necessary, and sometimes friends are simply too kind to push you as hard as you need. If you're considering choosing a friend, think carefully about whether that person is willing to be blunt and honest enough to hold you accountable. Focus on what you can control to avoid losing motivation. As you take action to end things, take care not to lose your motivation to deal with difficult situations. According to Cloud, it's easy to lose motivation when a situation includes circumstances outside of your control. The more you ruminate on unfortunate circumstances, the more you'll feel that there's nothing you can do to improve your situation. This leads to feelings of apathy that can stop you from acting. To avoid falling into this trap, focus on the elements of a situation that are within your control. Cloud argues that focusing on the things you can control helps to convince your brain that you have the power to influence the situation, which in turn empowers you to act. Suppose that your business is struggling due to rising inflation. If you choose to focus on the negative effects of inflation, you'll wind up feeling powerless, as there's nothing you can do to steer the global economy. However, if you instead choose to focus on the things your business can do to cut costs and increase revenue during this time, you'll likely see that you have many options for dealing with the situation. Doing so will help you avoid similar situations in the future. While it's important to reflect on relationships after they end, experts caution against hashing out the relationship with your ex. It can be tempting to meet up with your ex to discuss exactly what went wrong, but these meetings only lead to more conflict, and in some cases, they may even lead you to reopen a relationship that you worked hard to end. By contrast, when you avoid reflecting on your feelings, you're liable to make the same mistakes again. Not only this, but when you avoid processing your feelings and instead choose to avoid them, you're also more likely to make impulsive decisions to distract you from your pain. To avoid making impulsive decisions after ending a romantic relationship, some experts suggest setting aside a period of time to take a break from dating. Taking a break from dating gives you time to focus on yourself and on unpacking your feelings about the ending. Explicitly deciding to stop dating helps ensure that you don't allow yourself to be distracted by a sudden rebound fling. We've all been there, stuck in a rut. Whether it's a stale relationship or unsatisfying job, it can be difficult to put an end to what we don't like. It turns out that human beings are remarkably flexible when it comes to putting up with things that suck joy out of their lives. Sometimes it's important that we relieve ourselves of unwanted baggage so we can live fuller lives. Whether that means closing down a struggling business and going back to school or ending an abusive relationship, we need to take the plunge because the grass is almost always greener on the other side. In these insights, you'll learn how to make endings a normal, habitual part of your life, what signs you should look out for that indicate something should come to an end, and why it's sometimes necessary to get someone else to end things for you. Let's continue exploring the insights of this remarkable book. 1. Like it or not, endings are necessary whether at work, in business, or in our personal lives. At some time or other, we've all hit that wall. We're facing the end, and there's nothing to be done. It's a universal experience, and it can be galling. But it's important to remember that endings serve a purpose. They mean we will eventually thrive in professional and personal settings. They are, in fact, necessary. For instance, there are times when it's best to draw a line under a business venture or a product line. Perhaps a new technology has rendered those efforts unprofitable. Even design classics like the Walkman cassette player had to be put to bed eventually. It's true of fashion trends too. Flared corduroy trousers might have been all the rage in the 1970s. But the current low demand means that there's no point producing quite so many pairs anymore. Sometimes even employees have to be let go. Why keep someone around if they aren't living up to their promise? That's the time to find a better replacement who will help you achieve your long-standing objectives. What's true in business is also true in our personal lives. Endings are inevitable, but they mean we can move on. An unsupportive relationship or friendship prevents us from blooming, and a dysfunctional or violent relationship or an unhealthy friendship is worse still. But your relationship with yourself is harder to see. Just think about your behavioral patterns or harmful habits. Maybe you're too reliant on your parents' support, for instance. Simply put, endings are good things. They are necessary. Without them, we'd all be unhappily married to our high school sweethearts, stuck in our first jobs, or burdened with unreliable employees. We'd never reach our goals or actualize our dreams. 2. Have a clear idea of your goals and don't be afraid of endings. The gardener pruning his rose bushes has a clear goal in mind: healthy buds and vibrant colors. 3. Indicators will show whether something in your life should end or if you should press on. As endings can be painful, we do everything within our power to avoid them. But how do we know when an ending is required? For starters, past action is a good indication of future behavior. So look to the past if you want to predict possible futures. To create sufficient urgency for change, you've got to get real about present circumstances. Endings seem hard because they require change. Because most of us only make changes when they're absolutely necessary, endings are particularly tricky. We need to be pushed by fear and pulled by the possibility that the new scenario will be even better. We're best driven by a sense of urgency, whether it's a need to escape a disappointing situation or to reach a better place. 5. Sometimes you have to shoulder the responsibility for ending a relationship yourself. Imagine you're in a loving and close relationship with a man, but his non-committal behavior means it's difficult to picture a future with him. Nonetheless, you love him and can't envisage bringing the relationship to an end. 6. We all dread breakup conversations, so being well prepared is essential. If you've ever had to end a romantic or professional relationship, you'll know the conversation involved can be terrifying. Many people stall. It's understandable. In conclusion, Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud is a must-read for anyone looking to break free from limiting beliefs, make room for growth, and create a more fulfilling life. So, if you're ready to embrace endings as a pathway to new beginnings, be sure to check out this insightful book. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you found this book summary helpful, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more book summaries and self-improvement tips to help you achieve your goals and lead a more fulfilling life. And share this uplifting summary with someone who may benefit from hearing them. Leave a comment down below if you've read this book or have any other recommendations for us. And also don't forget to explore our curated playlists of book summaries covering various topics. Until next time, remember that sometimes endings are necessary to make room for beautiful new beginnings. Take care and keep growing.